Well, just every so
The
often
meeting
we
will
change
begin in 1 minute. The meeting will begin in 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you all. Welcome to our City Council informational meeting. Today is the 17th of October on Monday, which is a little different than usual, but thank you for being here a day off of schedule. We'll open up with City Council open discussion. Any open discussion? Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. One thing I just wanted to talk about, this last week I had the opportunity to do the Sleep Out Cold Nights, Warm Hearts at the Bishop Dudley House with, I think there was approximately 9 of us that we were hosted by the Bishop Dudley House. We learned all about their program, took a tour, got to really look at the facility and just really talk about their mission and what they do. The intent of the night was to raise awareness and money for the Bishop Dudley House. In doing so, we slept outside in the Bishop Dudley parking lot with a tent, just like a canvas-y type tent outside, and we slept in refrigerator boxes. And it was I wasn't really quite sure what to expect. I know Councilor Erpenbach did it last year, and it was very eye-opening just hearing the sounds of homelessness. I think that was the most interesting thing out of all of the sounds all night long of people coming and going and just how different our community really is and how much we might take for granted going home to our nice warm cozy beds or driving in our cars. And so we slept overnight. We had a wake up call at 5:30 in the morning, and then we kind of talked about what we heard, what we thought, what we experienced. It was very eye-opening. I know that there's been some interest from other counselors next year, and I've already turned your names in, so you're welcome for that. But happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything about it. It was a really great opportunity to just experience something different in our community and really try to be a better advocate for them. They did express great gratitude towards the amendment that the council did introduce and pass for additional funding for the Bishop Dudley House, and that was quite a topic that we talked about for some time as well. So I want to pass that along to you all, and again, if you have questions, happy to answer any.
What time in the morning was that reveille call?
The wake-up call was 5:30 in the morning. We had lights out about 10:15-ish.
That's why they didn't call me to do that.
That's probably right. But there were trains and ambulances and police cars and people, and it was nonstop throughout the whole night. And it really, sadly, it was 40 degrees, but it really was not even quite a picture of what most deal with. They would be happy to have a sleeping bag and a box and a tent to sleep in versus finding a tree to park it under for the night. So very, very interesting experience. So I encourage you to do it if you're able to do it.
Councilor Neisser?
There we go. This Saturday morning, my daughter Olivia and I took in the Midco Aquatic Center. We wanted to kind of give it a whirl, and we ended up being there for more than 3 hours. 3 hours in the pool. I will admit I took a nap in the afternoon. She wore me out. I must be getting old. I will say that she gave it rave reviews. I enjoyed it immensely. I heard a lot of very good commentary from citizens. There was a lot of tours going on the whole time, and I did see people signing up for passes, so hopefully those are selling pretty well. A lot of lifeguards. The customer service was excellent. They seemed to know exactly what was going on and what the rules were, and seemed to be doing a good job. There was a little of everything, including even going to the 50-meter pool and swimming some laps, which we did. So I would highly recommend it. And even at the daily rate, it was $7, $4 for me and $3 for her, which is, 3 hours of entertainment for $7. That's dirt cheap. So it was really a fabulous facility, and I would highly encourage citizens to give it a try.
And I had the same experience on Friday with my 3 grandsons. Just a note of interest, the one thing that they didn't take into account is all the ladies there in the morning with their hair dryers. And so they're having to add outlets in the women's locker room so that all the hair dryers can be plugged in. But they've got it taken care of. It's all ready to go. Just one of those things that you don't think of, and they're able to fix it and get it right. So, yes, Councilor Staley.
On Friday, I had the opportunity to go to the farm of Walter Bones, and first of all, let me say that he has extended this invitation to the rest of the council members. He's the former Secretary of Agriculture, and I had met him at an event in June, and we talked about farming. He has a farm west of T, and so I went out and spent 4 hours in a combine plowing down corn, which was just fascinating and kind of mesmerizing. But it was interesting because I know our finance director, Tracy Turbeck, had talked a few months ago about the sales tax growth being affected by the farming economy. And here Walt and I are in the combine talking about that very thing. And even though they have a huge abundance of harvest, the prices are so low that he said that farmers are tightening their belts. And I didn't realize what a huge impact they had on whether it's buying cars or machinery or furniture, that they are holding back on that. So anyway, if any of you are ever interested in going out to his farm, they have a dairy out there. It was really wonderful. He's a wonderful man. Just wanted to extend that invitation to you.
Super, thank you. I have one more. In front of you, you're going to find a little bag for those of you that are in the audience. It looks like this. On Thursday night, I was honored and to give a small welcoming talk to the Blue Light Project out at the Empire Mall. And the Blue Light Project is a nationwide recognition of law enforcement officers who have died in the line of duty. The effort began in 1989 in Philadelphia when Dolly Craig, and I'm reading this obviously, honored her son-in-law during the holiday season by placing a blue light in her window. Since 1989, states and municipalities all over the United States have joined the call for recognition and honor of police officers and any law enforcement officer who serves the public. So I would encourage you to take this home and especially during the holiday season to put up a blue light someplace and have it shine in the window or outside so that people know when they ask, you can explain to them that this is in honor of all law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty. There's many more than you think here in South Dakota in different ways. So thank you very much. I hope you can enjoy that. There's a blue light bulb inside each one of these bags. Okay, let's get on to our regular business then. Councilor Erickson, you have a report for us on what you did out in Rapid City.
Yes, thank you. Last week, myself, along with Councilor Starr, Kylie, and Ralphing, as well as some within the administration, attended the South Dakota Municipal League. I serve on the board for representing our Sioux Falls Council. So we had a board meeting the first night that I attended. That's why I was gone last week, Tuesday night. With that board meeting, the main thing that we discussed was showing support for the rural attorney program that is really, it's been a project of Chief Justice. And so they want to make some changes and allow municipalities to be able to recruit attorneys out into the rural areas. And so we decided as a board to support that. This will not impact Sioux Falls in any way, shape, or form, but it will impact many communities that oftentimes people need to drive an hour or longer to have services. So that was the first night. Throughout the conference, we did, as a council, meet with the Rapid City Council and had a great conversation and talked about the things that work for us, the things that work for them. And for me personally, I learned many different things. One thing that I want to highlight is their impact, that they've made it a very large priority working with the School of Mines and Western Dakota Tech. And through doing that, they're trying to not be a town with a college. They're trying to be a community that embraces and attracts college students that will get their education and grow their downtown area, where South Dakota School of Mines is. And we talked about property maintenance. We talked about drugs was a big thing that we talked about, and the impact that that has on our communities. So it was really a great opportunity to meet with them. There were 7 Rapid City councilors there, as well as the 4 of us. The other thing is during this conference, they have many breakout sessions and things to attend. And one of the things that I thought was most fascinating was the conversation talking again about drugs. I had the opportunity afterwards to talk to DCI agent Brian. I'm spacing his last name right now because I didn't write it down in my notes, but I have his email, and the impact that the state is going to start having. They have, in my opinion, a very small budget to make an impact, but when you tie that in with the other communities, that the municipalities and or the counties that have additional funding available to really grow that impact. And so it's called Project SAFE, I believe that they are doing, no, Project Stand Up, Project Stand Up. They've invited us to be a part of it, as well as I extended the invitation on behalf of the council to be involved when we are making decisions with our preventative services, because at the end of the day, it's really about prevention and not just trying to solve a problem that already exists. So they are looking forward to partnering with us, and they're also looking at being in the business community as well to try to get additional funds to fund this Project Stand Up. But we've got a substantial amount of money, in my opinion, that we can also get together with them. We also talked about had some different sessions. Another one, and you can all add what you'd like to add as well, but one of the ones that spoke volumes to me was stakeholder communications, being your best, preparing for the worst. She offered a website that I haven't had a lot to look at yet. It's called smartmouthcommunications.com, and it's really about how to engage and listen, and it was interesting in my opinion. Also, I had the opportunity to be one of the general sessions. It's a date with the state, making your voice heard and peer. And so myself with other 3 legislators talked about how to build the communication with your area legislators. And I highlighted what we as a council do with our legislators, inviting them in twice a year and talking about what's going on in our city and things that maybe the council or the administration deems priorities, and how we can partner together, and encouraged others to do the same thing with their legislators. So it was a great time, great learning, always good meeting other elected officials and learning what works for them and ways we can do things better. So happy to answer any questions, or if anyone else that attended would like to chime in, go for it.
Councilor Starr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 things that really stood out to me. One was we had a really great meeting with the Rapid City Council, and were able to share some ideas that were awesome. But the one that stood out to me, they had recently had a public meeting where a room full of people similar to what's here today about meth, and they were talking about the use of meth in their community. And a young lady about 15 years old approached the podium at this meeting and basically was asking for help and wanted to know where a person would go to receive help. And it really shocked me that, and made me spend some time in the last week and a half or so looking at what resources we have in Sioux Falls. Where would I recommend a friend's daughter, or if this young person approached me, and having that opportunity of what would you do and how would you handle something like that? It was so surprising, or they were shared how remarkable it was that this young person got up in front of a group of people that, again, looks very similar to what we do here today. So having that information is so vital, and knowing the resources that are available in our community are important. One of the other things that really stood out to me at the Municipal League Conference was a presentation that was done by Mr. Kelby Maris from the Parks and Rec Department. He worked with city resources and was able to record a session, so he didn't have to actually be at the conference, but was able to share the expertise that we have here in Sioux Falls with the emerald ash borer, similar to the presentation that we received a month or so ago. So both of those, it was nice that we were able to share some resources, research, information that was available, and things that we could share with other cities in the state of South Dakota. So thank you.
Super. I would add a couple of things. Number one, the Municipal League meeting will be in Sioux Falls next year. And so we would, invite all of you that haven't gone to one of those or wasn't able to attend this year to please make the effort to come next year. Secondly, interesting in that when we talked to Rapid City about meeting again, oh yes, we need to get together again. Their first reaction was, when's the next big event happening at the Premier Center that you guys can have us down for? So they know about the Premier Center and how it's gone over and how what kind of entertainment venue it really is. So that was very interesting to me. Okay, let's move on then to Director Turbach and the financial report for September.
Good afternoon, councilors. Tracy Turbach with the Finance Office. Before I jump into my presentation, I just want to say it's certainly gratifying to hear some of the positive comments about the Aquatic Center. I was out of town and wasn't able to attend the grand opening, but sounded like it was a huge success. And I guess I take it from your comments, Councilor Rolfing, that you found the number of hair dryers in the men's locker to be sufficient. That's
Yes, very much so. Yes.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yep.
All right, with that, we'll get started.
I guess I deserved that one, didn't I?
We're already 9 months into the year as of September 30th, so we'll roll through some of the data that we do track and provide that update, and then jump into whatever questions you folks have today. No surprise, continues to carry a very low percentage here in the Sioux Falls MSA. It ticked up just slightly in August, up to 2.1%. Still significantly below the state and the national rates. So that's certainly reflects a strong employment here. We are seeing more and more people employed here in the Sioux Falls economy, and that's certainly a positive driver for our local economy. Building permit values continue to perform at a very high level. Compared to last year, we're up about 5% through the first 9 months of the year. Through September of this year, we've issued permits valued at over $573 million. It's running about $27 million ahead of last year at this time. Looking at sales tax growth, the rolling 12-month growth rate, so in other words, through September, over the past year, our sales tax revenues for our general sales taxes have grown at 3.2%. That's up just ever so slightly from what we reported a month ago. That was at 3.1%. So while it's certainly not the kind of turnaround we're hoping to see at some point, it's certainly positive in that it didn't slide any lower this last month. Entertainment tax collections have grown at 4.4% over the past 12 months. Again, that's an indicator of still relatively solid growth in the what I would consider discretionary spending in our economy on eating out, entertainment venue, ticketed events, motel rooms, and alcoholic beverage sales. Looking at our general fund revenues and expenses year to date, through the first 9 months of the year, general fund has had revenues of just under $99 million, about 64% of what we've budgeted we have recognized in revenues for the year. That $98.9 million is up 5.1% compared to a year ago when we were at 65% of budget. So we're very, very close, tracking very close to where we would expect to be at this time of year relative to our budget. Expenditures, we've expended $106.4 million through September. That's 67% of our budget. Last year at this time, we had expended 69%, so we're running a little lighter on expenses this year, and that's certainly by intent. We've been managing through our budget process in response to the slower than anticipated sales tax revenue growth. So our revenues year to date in the general fund are up about 5.1% over last year. Our expenditures are up 3.2%, so that's certainly a positive benchmark to look at, where our revenues are growing more quickly than our expenses. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and try to answer whatever questions you folks have in your mind today.
Thank you. Councilor Neitzer.
I think from when I was looking at this, the reserve level is right about the 25%. Is that correct?
That is what is budgeted for to hit the end of the year, right? We've budgeted to end 2016 right at the 25% level.
Does it show it show where we're at right at this moment in this report or not?
We don't put that percentage in the report. It does fluctuate fairly significantly throughout the year. It's at this point in the year, it's trending down until we get that second half property tax payment in November, and then it'll jump back up. So we can certainly provide that information to you so you can see. We've done that before in some of our monthly presentations where we'll show you the historical kind of ebb and flow throughout the year, and that's primarily driven by the property tax collections that spike in May and November.
And you just answered my question. I was just going to ask if the second half property tax had come in. And then the only other question is, are we still on target this week to issue administration building bonds?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would point out on page 1, going back, right now we're at 25.5% available on the larger end of it on the budget, and we're at 19.8% on the unrestricted cash balance. Am I correct on that?
The 25.5% reflects the budgeted numbers, the budgeted
Right, the budgeted numbers.
Yeah.
The 19.8 is the reserve, or?
That's the amount of unencumbered cash in the general fund, right? And the policy, and we don't talk about that very often, but the council policy also sets a target of 11% of unrestricted cash. So you can see we're well above that.
Okay. Councilor Staley.
Last month I was having a discussion with a former city council member. We were talking about these sales tax growth numbers, and he said that he thought that if we got below 3.3%, it could start to affect just the general operations of our city government. Is there like a number that says this is what's needed to keep things happening? I just thought I'd ask you. Come back to.
Well, I wouldn't say that there's any particular percentage where that happens. Anytime, just as we've been talking about for the last 6 months, where our updated projections and our current growth rates are running below what was anticipated in the original budget. So that has certainly caused us to manage things differently this year than we might otherwise have done if we had seen 6% growth, for example. So some of the things that we have not expended dollars on, that certainly is an impact to our operational budget. You know, the goal that we established last spring, when we certainly recognized that sales tax revenues were not growing, was to offset that whatever gap we might end the year with in terms of our sales tax revenues by spending less. And the target was to do those things that are least disruptive to the operation of the city, take those dollars off the table. We've talked about some of them in the past. Some of the other areas where we're saving funds on fuel, for example. Fuel costs are just down, and so naturally we recognize some budget savings through that, fairly significant savings. We've talked about the Cayley Branch Library project coming in under budget, so we take those savings off the table. Those things are ways to fill that revenue shortfall, that revenue gap, without really having a significant impact or measurable impact at all on the level of services provided by the city. So want to do the best we can to maintain the level of services. So that's been the approach since about April.
Is there a level that, let's say it, just worst case scenario, it keeps dropping down, we get to like 1.5% growth. At what, is there like a level that is needed just to keep things, the basic functions happening in our government? Would you say that? I mean, at what point would that become alarming?
Well, I guess I don't know what.
Or is that not, maybe that person didn't have the right information? When they were saying that they have a long history in government, they thought it was a 3% needed to just keep things happening.
I think over the long term, if you assume over the very long term, inflation will run at 3%. Whether that's true or not, I can't say. But if you're assuming that to be the case, then yeah, you would need to see 3% growth in your revenue simply to keep pace with inflation.
Thank you.
And I would point out also, Counselor, that just a quick division and stuff here that, we started out at 6% beginning of the year, and now we're down to 3.2%. That's a monthly figure. So about the average is still 4.5 on that if we look at total funds coming in. So I would imagine that comes into play also. But we really have not come down to, everything is at 3.2 just the last month, and so there would have to be an average made of that. Councilor Neisser.
Just out of curiosity, something else that occurred to me: the enterprise funds, which would be user fee based, and they really wouldn't be affected, obviously, since they're not using sales tax dollars. Have they had to make adjustments? Have they seen softening or projections that they had that would have been less?
No. Revenues are coming in on track with our enterprise funds.
Okay.
So yeah, they're really not affected by the level of retail sales or taxable sales.
Okay.
The way the general fund is.
And those funds are all in here in the main part too. Super. Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Erickson.
Can you, just based on your email with the audits, so are the audits done or are they ongoing all the time? I know based on your email of the excluding audits and including audits, I guess talk a little bit about the difference of those.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're seeing this year is that the amount of receipts that we get from the state as a result of audits, it has been a drag on our growth this year. And it's been anywhere from about 0.3 to 0.5%. So in other words, the amount of additional collections or receipts that we've received from the state this year from audits is fairly significantly below what it was at this time last year. It's about $300,000 or so for our general fund. So I don't know exactly how to explain that. They do have audits going on throughout the year. We get some collections essentially every month on audits, and it's really, we don't have any way to predict when they might have a big audit settlement. So it's really, we just take it as it comes, and we don't generally anticipate a lot of revenue from audits.
Can I ask a follow-up, if you don't mind?
Certainly.
This is, I don't know if I'm off base by asking this, but when a settlement is done, so there's an audit, say the Department of Revenue goes in and does an audit, and it's, I'm just using nice round numbers, it's $5 million additional taxes that they owe, and because there's penalties and interest and whatever else, they're going to go ahead and just settle for $3 million. I don't think they'd probably do that significant of a deduction, but are you, I mean, if it's happening in Sioux Falls and the audit was done here, are you in those conversations about a potential settlement or anything? Because that's a substantial amount of money that we as a community lose if they're going ahead and saying, I'll go ahead and negotiate this on your behalf. You weren't going to have it anyways, so I guess $3 million is better than nothing. But I just was curious if there's ever any conversations that you're included with any of that, or they just make a good decision
Yeah,
for
the
us?
city is not party to that, although based on experience, when the city has been on the receiving end of audits, they don't tend to negotiate.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's pretty much you owe it, you pay it, and that's all there is to it. Now, there may be cases that actually go to court where there may be, something less than the full amount might end up being paid, but generally speaking, the Department of Revenue isn't very forgiving in that, which is good for the city, I suppose.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was ever any negotiation, and if there was, if that was something they just did on our behalf. So one other quick comment I just want to make, based on being in the municipal league conference last week, this conversation came up actually during the board meeting of, hey, how's your sales tax revenue growth? And we are not the only community that is seeing a slower growth than projected. Several mayors around the table were saying, yeah, we projected this much and we're in at this much. And so it's certainly being felt across the whole state. And the amounts were quite interesting. I don't want to say an amount and misspeak, but certainly some of the other communities, the rate that they were growing at is a larger hit than probably what we are feeling right now. They're still growing, but just they had a bigger gap than what we're experiencing, and they're doing the exact same thing. They're cutting a few projects here and there, and they're trying to manage their funds based on things that can maybe wait until next year or in the future. And so it was very interesting just hearing them talk about it, as well as we've been talking about this every month when we get our monthly report. So just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you. A couple of comments from my standpoint. We ought to all remember that this is a decline in the projected increase in sales tax. It's not the sales tax revenues are down. They're not. They're up. That's right. But the rate of increase that we were projecting is not as high as we thought. And then, interesting with Councilor Erickson, if they did an audit, the Revenue Department did an audit of a large business in Sioux Falls, and that was collecting sales tax, and there was a $5 million settlement. Would that come directly to Sioux Falls, or would that be spread over the entire situation with the state and then divided according to what the amount of sales tax, percentage sales tax revenue that was brought in?
The amount that is collected through the audit process is distributed in the same way that it should have been distributed in the first place, had the taxes been collected and remitted the way they're required to be. So if it's a Sioux Falls business and the sales taxes, a share of that should have gone to the city of Sioux Falls, and that's what we will receive.
And a share.
Right.
We wouldn't get the whole thing. It would still go back to the state.
The state would get their 4% or 4.5% now. And
then, okay, thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, we will move on, and thank you very much, Director. Next is a very interesting topic we're looking forward to, and that is the new railroad development plan that is set to go. Director Cooper.
Good afternoon, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. I want to start out by reminding the council that we've put in place an internal project team to work on this next phase of the rail yard redevelopment. We're led by Aaron Boffenkamp, our project manager. We have representatives of Public Works, including Diane Best, Josh Peterson, with Community Development, Darren Ketchum and Brent O'Neill, and then myself along with Diane DeCoyer representing the Planning Office. We have also been working closely with Downtown Sioux Falls as well as others. There's no doubt that there's a significant level of interest in downtown Sioux Falls. One of the ways that we can track that level of interest is by looking at building permits, and it's an interesting follow-up to Tracy's financial update of overall this year. We're still ahead of our record 2015 numbers. But within our downtown boundaries, which goes from Minnesota Avenue to 14th up to Falls Park and then east past Weber Avenue. Within that geographical area, so far this year, our building permit numbers are just under $47 million, which is the all-time highest since we've been tracking numbers for the downtown geographical area, $47 million. Since 2011, within that same geographical area, there's been about a $180 million investment in downtown Sioux Falls, just over $180 million of investments. And also since 2011, there has been, through building permits, an additional 327 housing units within the downtown area. So we're seeing a huge interest historically, and we know that that interest is going to continue moving forward, which is one of the reasons why we're all extremely excited about looking at the rail yard redevelopment proposal. Along with that level of interest, we've heard from people that the traditional things that you would see downtown, a place to work, a place to live, a place to recreate, we see that moving forward. And no, I'm not stealing all of your thunder, so don't worry about that. But we've also heard people comment through this process of interest in expanding opportunities for educational facilities, expanding opportunities for visitors through overnight stay, through conference facilities, through shopping, and then also expanding facilities for special activities, special events, festivals. So when you put all that together and try to consolidate all of these different ideas and what the potential is for not only the 10 acres of the rail yard property that we own, but also what the potential is for those adjoining areas in the downtown. That's what we have our DG here tonight or this afternoon, to kind of show you how that vision is identified moving forward. We selected them through a competitive process based on their experience with working on similar projects throughout the Midwest. And today, to present the proposal for the rail yard redevelopment plan, I want to introduce Carrie Thompson with RDG, and then we'll follow Carrie with some comments by Darren Ketchum, and then we also can be available to address any questions that you have. So I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Again, my name's Carrie Thompson. I'm with RDG Planning and Design in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a landscape architect. I've been working with a couple other colleagues of mine that couldn't make it tonight. Marty Schukert, who's our principal planner in our Omaha office, and Laura Kessel, who's an urban designer in our Des Moines office. So both of them helped me on this project, along with numerous other people in our office. So I wanted to start it off, tonight's presentation, with a project overview, kind of what we went through the last month and a half or so, and kind of what's going to happen moving forward. And Darren's going to kind of follow up with that at the end, how we move forward. We started off with a site inventory, really got to know what this site was all about, learning from the city, just getting down there and walking around the site. We had some stakeholder input while we were up here over a month ago. We developed concepts during that time. We also, while we developed those concepts, we had public open houses to gather more input on those concepts. We created a draft concept and looked through an implementation strategy, and then we were revising our draft, and now we're presenting the final master plan tonight to you all. And then we'll move forward after this with the phase 2 RFP, and then phase 3 selecting the developer. A few plans, just briefly, a few plans that we looked at as a basis for our design were the Sioux Falls Greenway Plan, the Rail Yard Environment Assessment Plan, the Sioux Falls Downtown Plan from 2025, and the Downtown Market Study. A few of those things reiterated what Mike just said, what some of the public wants downtown: more retail, more public space, more things to do downtown. And also the market study kind of conveyed the need for more housing in the downtown area. We went into creating these site inventory maps to help us, create a basis for our design concept and thinking. We looked at existing circulation. The blue lines here are vehicular circulation, pedestrian circulation, and then the wonderful greenway just adjacent to the property here. Again, just to get you oriented on these maps, north is up. The Big Sioux River is to your on the left side here, and the development area is denoted in the black here. And then we also looked at parking around the development area. You know, how could that influence our concept and the development inside the rail yard property. We also looked at land use. What are the uses around there? Most of it's commercial right now in that area. And the area is also all zoned downtown PUD district. We also looked at the topography and hydrology of the area. Most of the property is outside of the floodplain. There is a 500-year floodplain that nicks the property on the north and south side, but usually those are pretty easy to accommodate in building. And then in 2017, the actual FEMA map will be updated, so this may change just a little bit as well. So while we were here August 30th to September 1st. We walked the site. The city took us around, took a few pictures here. This is a view of the site. This view right here is looking south from 8th Street, and then this is looking north from 8th Street. That's basically our little sliver of property. We also walked around and looked at the businesses and experienced the businesses. There's a great diverse group of businesses down in this area already. We ate at lunch at the Mediterranean place. I forgot the name of it.
Synopsis.
Yep, that's it. We walked around the Greenway, which is another awesome asset of this city, and how close it is to this property. So we looked at ways maybe how we can connect those and complement the existing businesses that are already down there. And so also to influence our concept design, we gathered public input. This was at the downtown library where we held this public open house. We created some slides with some visual imagery, and we asked people to place green dots on their favorite picture that might help get a sense of what this area could be like. We also had them put Post-it notes on the aerial that you see on the screen that just, gave us comments about what they would like to see enhanced down in that area. So from that, we created these 3 concepts, preliminary concepts on site here in Sioux Falls. And all 3 were relatively the same, really bringing back kind of a street grid in this area and creating mixed use opportunities and open spaces for people for the public to use. We presented these 3 concepts on September 1st at the downtown library. Again, you can see the image on the right. We got feedback from the public, very good feedback. So we took that feedback and also feedback from our city steering committee and created a final concept, or not a final concept, but a revised concept. And also from that input, we developed these vision and goals from the area, mainly from what we heard from the city and from what we heard from the public. And a lot of that was creating a live, work, and play environment, creating urban plazas and open space with iconic public art. There was a talk of maybe taking the sculpture walk down into this area as well. And also creating areas for mixed-use development, creating neighborhood connectivity from downtown to the Whittier neighborhood was an important aspect too. And also improving walkability in this area and just creating a dense environment where it's safe to walk and gather and shop, and also promoting sustainable development. So here is the concept plan that we came up with. This image here shows what specifically is on city property that was purchased here. So again, north is up here, the Big Sioux River to your left. Kind of start out on the north side. and we'll have a few more close-ups as I get into some of the other slides. The north side, 8th or 6th Street is here, running east and west, and then 8th Street is here, down in the middle. We're designers, so we like to look outside of just that boundary, so we wanted to see how the businesses around the area could interconnect, so that's why you see some of the other areas that have some ideas that might relate to this development. But this kind of plan shows how flexible it is, that most of this development could happen without any other development happening on private property. This could happen by itself. So, just going through the plan, on the north side here, you'll see some different colors on the buildings. One is a mixed-use retail building along 6th Street. 2, 3, and 4 are also mixed-use buildings. They could either be retail, residential, office. They could be all three. So just providing an area mixed use for these buildings, and then creating a public market here. We heard from the public that maybe an indoor year-round market might be something that could be added to this area to bring people down into this development. And also another complementary mixed-use area with some parking adjacent. And then this plan shows kind of the full-out development that would happen, some on private property, and then, of course, our rail yard development property here. So to get into a little bit more detail on the plan, well, and then on the plan, this is kind of a rough idea of how much space would be generated by this plan. In the rail yard development area itself, 200 to 250 residential units, 70, 80,000 square feet of office, 40 to 50,000 square feet of retail, and then parking 1,000 to 1,400 spaces. And then you see the development that possibly could happen outside the redevelopment area. And again, a lot of these are interchangeable numbers too, just because the kind of mixed use hasn't been defined in each of these buildings. And then some ideas for those mixed use buildings. This is a building in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It has retail on the ground floor, has office on the second floor, and then residential on the top 2 floors. So this is just an idea of what maybe could go into this space, but it may change as we go through the developer process. This is also development in downtown Council Bluffs, Iowa. And then again, this is retail on the first floor, residential on the top 2 floors. So we think this scale, the height of the buildings is kind of what we're looking for in this redevelopment area. And this is an example of a mixed-use parking garage in downtown Lincoln with retail on the first floor, parking on the intermediate levels, and then residential on the top floors. Again, maybe the scale isn't as tall as it is in downtown Lincoln. Maybe there's only a few stories of parking, but that'll depend, that'll be up to the developer to decide on kind of that size. And then an example of a rooftop deck that could overlook the development area and possibly views into the Sioux Falls Greenway. This is an example of the indoor-outdoor market. If any of you have been to Kansas City or Milwaukee, the river market down in Kansas City is an example of kind of this year-round market idea, and as well as Milwaukee, which has a year-round indoor market. So looking at the transportation framework, we have kind of 4 essential parts. The first one is the promenade. The second is a loop road. Third is 7th Street, and the fourth is bicycle circulation. And I'll go into detail on these plans here. The promenade is basically just a wide pedestrian walkway. In our concept, it's about 20 to 25 feet with landscaping, places to sit, places for public art. And this basically serves a connection from the north end to the Greenway, all the way to the south end and creates almost a pedestrian loop with the existing greenway trail here. But it will also serve as kind of the major unifying element throughout the development. And the image you see on the right is actually Pearl Street Mall in downtown Boulder, Colorado, as just an example of what that space could look like. And then looking at vehicular kind of circulation, the concept creates basically a vehicular loop here, a loop road as we're labeling it on the plan. Comes on the east side of the property, comes down to the south, bisects to the north of the property, just south of 8th and Railroad, and then loops back into Reed Street here, and then continues into the existing kind of development of the Sharapa Place, and then creating a new Reed Street extension between the Sharapa Place and the rail yard development, creating this kind of vehicular loop. This idea basically tries to keep the vehicles to the outside of the development, thus creating a walkable community inside of this development. There's also been talk, there was also part of the concept was possibly extending Reed Street through this existing property. That could be done in the future, but right now this concept does not show that. We just show that as a dash line. And then also looking at vehicular transportation, making that connection with the existing development to the west to the new development to the east would be a 7th Street connection. This could be what we call a convertible street that could be closed during festivals or events. That would be adjacent to a central plaza. So the street could be closed during an event at the central plaza to create a greater area for that central plaza. The image you see on the right is just an example of a convertible street in Seattle, Washington. And then the idea of the bicycle connection with the wonderful greenway bike trail here. The idea is that you could connect through here. There would be a 10-foot bike trail on the east side of that loop road that would connect back to the greenway, again, creating a loop around this downtown area. And along that loop, there would be some informational kiosks related to the existing rail yard that was once there. And the kiosk is a part of the agreement with the railroad to have something there historically that conveyed what was there previous to the development. And then looking at open space and pedestrian circulation, the major concept here on the north side between 6th and 8th Street is this central plaza idea that could be fronted by retail or offices on all sides, again with a convertible street of 7th Street to the south that could be used for festivals and events. I was just I ran the half marathon yesterday at downtown Des Moines, and their start of their half marathon was at Coles Commons in downtown Des Moines, and it's an open public plaza that they had the streets blocked off, and it was just a great event, a great place for activity and just good people watching all around in general. And then this idea, open space idea, is the market plaza that would be adjacent to the indoor market. This example is in Santa Fe. They have an outdoor market during the summertime along their existing rail yard. We could have some icons similar to their water tank there that helps draw people in off of 8th Street there. It helps signify the district. Or we could use something similar that is on the east side or west side of 8th Street. That's a column that demarks the East Bank district. And then last is not only looking at the street level, but also looking at the top of the buildings too, and how those could be used as roof decks and green roofs that people could use and experience the skyline of downtown Sioux Falls and the views into Falls Park to the north and the Greenway to the west. And then this last slide here is a three-dimensional image of the entire development concept, including what's inside the rail yard boundary, as well as kind of private property development too. You see the scale is around 4 or 5 stories, similar to what Sharapa Place and the Railroad Center is now. And so keeping that scale somewhat similar to the surrounding buildings. So with that, I'll turn it over to Darren.
Thanks, Kerry. Good evening, Council. Darren Ketchum with the City of Sioux Falls Community Development Office. What an exciting time for our community to finally get to this point where we're starting to see, potentially at least in big blocks, of what this rail redevelopment could really look like for our community. We just want to make sure that we communicate to you what has been done so far. And it's been a lot of work, and we have a great team, but there's a lot of work to do. And that work will not happen in a matter of months or in a short matter of years. The redevelopment of our rail yard likely could take a couple decades, depending on the processes that we use, the market. Certainly, we're looking at private investment for these redevelopment of these parcels in downtown. But we want to make sure that it's done right. Simply loading up this area with what we can get instead of what we want and need in this area are probably two different things. And we need to be very selective when we go through these next processes with the request for proposal to make sure that we are truly getting the development that complements our downtown, adds to the vibrancy, the growing economy, the rooftops. The number of people that will live and work in this area is significant, and it truly makes a difference in our community. We feel that developed to its full potential, this project could result in over $150 million of additional private investment in the core of our city. What a fantastic opportunity for not only the community, but our businesses, our visitors. This will truly become another destination for Sioux Falls. How do we get there? Well, the next couple months will mean our team is working to draft the request for proposal that will then be available on the market for developers and interested parties to put proposals together. We feel by the end of the year we'll have those processes wrapped up, so then that way shortly after the first of the year we'll be able to put that out so people can start putting their ideas together. And we want to make sure that we give people a sufficient amount of time to develop a realistic, a feasible concept that they can actually bring to reality in our rail yard. When we look at these proposals, it'll be not a one-day process. Certainly, we hope to have the proposals back and take a significant amount of time to review them and make sure that we're selecting the best proposals for our downtown. Hopefully by the summer here of 2017, we'll have that kind of first project identified through the selection process, and we'll be able to start negotiations. When we're talking about developments of this stature, certainly we're talking of buildings potentially in the tens of millions of dollars. These details will take us some time to iron out, and we expect that the negotiations may take a year or better to make sure that we do it in a way that it truly adds value to our community. At the end of the day, we think the first project can have a groundbreaking sometime in that late spring, early summer of 2018. So we're looking at a few years down the road, but the wait will be well worth it. How do we put this out? We know that this will be a multi-year process, maybe a multi-decade process. And so that's what we're working with our consultant on. We know how to get the information out and get that first project going. But then trying to develop a process that continues to solicit investment in our property over the long term, whether it be multiple RFPs or a continuous solicitation process, marketing this property through conventional real estate channels are all options that we have. Throughout this, we'll continue to come to the council and provide regular updates, whether it be in public informational settings or whether it be in more confidential settings to discuss contract negotiations, potentially in an executive session. We also envision the council playing a role in the selection process. As we've done in all of these large projects in recent years, we'll include the council as a scoring member, members of the council as a scoring member of the RFP. We think it's been successful, and we're trying to make sure that we're bringing people together that bring different perspectives, so that way we can vet a project at the highest level on the scoring team. We don't want just one group of people that are all from maybe a financial background, or a group that's all from engineering. We truly want that cross-functional team. So with that, I would say we're here to answer any questions you have, and what I would just kind of lead you before you have questions is, these are lines on a piece of paper today. What we have in our community in 15 years will likely look much different than what you see on a piece of paper today, but this is all part of the process and how we get there. So Council Chair, I guess we'd welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, all of you, for a great presentation. Councilor Stately, let's start with you.
And Darren, I know that you've been meeting with some of the council members already. I haven't had a chance to meet with you. I will do that on Friday, but I've got 3 questions. How many parcels are going to be available on this property? What happens if the owner purchases it and decides to change the venue? Are they locked into, let's say that it's a restaurant and then it doesn't work and they want to make it into a Goodwill store? Not that that probably wouldn't be happening, but what are they going to be locked in forever? And then at the third thing I want to know is the city going to be owning any of this property at the end of the day, or is our goal to have that all shifted to the private sector?
Certainly, and I would offer to the other members of our team, jump in if you feel necessary. The number of parcels, definitely I think we're in that 6 or 7. That will be something we flesh out more through the RFP process. We're going for more of the bigger, bolder types of property to incent that larger development. And we know that larger pieces of land are required for the size of structures that we're looking at. But certainly that could change between now and then, but I would say anywhere from that 6 to 10 probably. But as far as venue change, when we go through the RFP process, that's one of the benefits of the process, is we're able to negotiate a development agreement that identifies those business terms that we can hold the purchaser accountable for meeting that. So if you say you're going to build a restaurant, for example, and you all of a sudden 6 months later come back and say, hey, restaurant's no longer in the cards, I want to do something else, we have the ability to say, well, that doesn't comply with the proposal that you submitted that we all agreed to, and have like a reverter clause to basically reject that and retain that property back to do a different project. And then the final question, the city owned. Our intention is not to retain ownership of this property publicly, but to sell this through the established processes with RFPs or other real estate practices, all to put it back into private development. We don't envision any, government-owned markets or government-owned buildings. Really, the private investment is what's going to make this, take this from kind of a rail yard to something that we're very proud of in the next decades.
And just to clarify on number 2, I'm talking about long-term. If they were initially saying we're having a restaurant, they try a restaurant, and 5 years from now the restaurant doesn't make it, are they going to be free then as the owner of that property to say, well, now I'm going to put a clothing store in here?
Well, I would we have some ability, and maybe Mike, you can talk about through land uses and permitting processes. Certainly if we sell you a piece of property and in 5 years you change your mind and you try to sell it, you're going to be able to sell it. However, the uses of that property still need to be consistent with the zoning downtown. And so if they were going to do something different that required a change in zoning, certainly the city would be involved in that.
Good answer. Yeah. The key thing is that we'll have development agreements that will be approved by the city council that will lay out the expectations not only of the developer, but also, in some cases, the city. And those development agreements can help us monitor what happens in the future. And as Darren says, if there are potential changes due to the market or other unforeseen situations, we're still going to have our overall concept plan that we want to follow, as well as our downtown design standards that we'll have. And then I would also go back to the third question, that we are going to try to maximize the private investment in the rail yard as well as downtown. There could be some potential public partnerships with things like the loop road or the bike trail, other public-private partnerships that we might want to look at to incentivize the development that we're going to be soliciting. So those kind of details would also be worked out as we go through the proposal and selection process.
Councilor Neisert.
I have
I'm sorry, was there more?
No, that's, thank you.
Councilor Neisert?
I do have a number of questions, so I'll just do a couple and then I'll defer and then come back. So the first thing is, as I was thinking about this, when you split it into multiple pieces, that it needs to be cohesive, you want to have a flow and kind of maintain that character. So this is zone DTPUD, which does have some restrictions. Have we thought about doing like a overlay district possibly, where you could be even more restrictive? And I mean, that's...
Yes, we are going to have an environmental overlay district, similar to what we've done with the Uptown at Falls Park. And really what that is intended to do is to make sure that any development understands that there could be some soil remediation as a part of this. As you've heard us say in the past, as we went through the selection, as we went through the purchase process with the environmental assessment, it's very minimal in terms of contaminated soil. But there are always going to be surprises because of the history of downtown development. So we want to have that process in place. And we are also going to have some design standards for this area in addition to the PUD.
Okay. And then as far as the infrastructure, obviously I would assume the developer is going to have to do his or her own roads because it's local roads. Now, as far as city investment, do we have the sewer capacity to handle all of this? Is there anything we project that we're going to have to come back and do to beef up, whether it be sewer, roads, general capital?
We have the basic infrastructure in place to handle this downtown development. Obviously, we're going to be upgrading 6th Street and 8th Street. That'll be the city commitment. And then as the individual properties come forward with development, it'll be up to the developer to make the connections to our basic infrastructure system. But again, we're not anticipating any major upsizing of water mains and sewer, sanitary sewer capacity to accommodate this level of development in the future.
And I'll defer.
Councilor Erickson.
I have a few brief ones, but can defer to if I go on too long. So my question would be, RFP is, will there be an opportunity for a counselor to be involved, and will there be average Joe citizen on there as well? I know some of the RFPs do, some don't, and I'm just curious about the opportunity for that.
Certainly we'll include the council representative as we do the RFP process. We'll talk amongst the team to see what value is added from another citizen, but we have done that in the past, as you're aware, and certainly are open to that discussion in the future.
My other question is the impact of trains. We obviously aren't going to be getting rid of every single train in the downtown area, and so I'm curious as far as how many trains will still be going through if we have restrictions on development with that. Josh, maybe? The train master, you didn't bring your conductor hat. So the impact of trains going through the area, about how many a day are we looking at doing, or what is that going to look like?
The trains are going to stay consistent about with what they're doing today as far as the through movements. There's the 5 to 10 trains that we see at today.
Okay.
What you're going to see, the decrease is going to be where we've got some switching operations that are happening downtown, and the parking of trains that happen downtown now. Okay. That's the activities that are going to be moved out along Rice Street. Okay. For the new tracks that are being constructed out there.
Okay, thank you. And then if I can ask, in regards to the flood area here. Recently, we had Jeffrey Schmidt in front of us talking about what you can and can't build, the impact of insurance, things of that nature. So I'm not a flood expert at all, so I'm just curious if we'll have restrictions, if we'll have to purchase flood insurance, or if that will be the private developer, or what implications will being in that flood zone area have?
Right, when Carrie was going through this, and I probably shouldn't flip through all these because I won't. The area that we showed on the graphic is what we call the 500-year flood event. So that is an area that we do not have restrictions as far as development or requirements for any flood insurance. That only pertains to the 100-year floodplain or the floodway. So we're not concerned with limitations as far as development within those areas in the very north and the very south edges.
But will we have to have additional insurance or
No,
anything?
we will
on this?
not.
Not in the 500, okay.
Correct.
And one more, if I may, Mr. Chair. In regards, I saw in the picture, and I know this is just concept, this is not going to be an actual blueprint. I mean, this is kind of the hope, so I get that. But obviously, there's been a lot of emphasis when you add this many spaces, and it's a walkable area, there obviously has to be somewhere to park your car. And we heard about the extra spaces as well as a mixed-use parking garage potential for being in this particular area to serve the area. So my question is we're already talking about building one right now. And this may not be needed for 5, 10 years. We don't know the time frame, but I'm curious as far as how that will be paid, if there's enough enterprise funds, if it will have to be bonded, or what does that look like? I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I'm just curious as far as, you know, we're pretty restricted with if we sell these lands, we have to use it for highways and streets, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we can't probably use that for a parking garage. No. So how is that paid for at that time? Because we're already looking at a potential bond of could be as high as 17 whatever $million.
Yep, thanks, Counselor. I think where we're at with this particularly is looking at how much of the parking can be satisfied with the construction of the private development themselves. Certainly, there's a responsibility when you're building brand new in an area like this to account for parking where it's a little bit different than if we're up and down Phillips Avenue where there's just not the capacity or the ability to do some of those. And so we think some of that will certainly be served internal to some of the structures and parcels. There may be an opportunity to do a public-private partnership in a mixed-use type of ramp, similar to what we're talking about today. We would look at the demand analysis based off of the creation, how many additional private parking spaces are created through this, what is our peak load throughout the day, and then when we look at okay, what is remaining? Because parking can have multiple purposes, and that's the beauty of the mixed use. If we have, where people are living, working, playing, they use parking at different times of day, and so you can gain some efficiencies in parking. Certainly, the opportunity exists for public-private partnership or mixed-use parking. If it was to be operated by the public parking side, certainly enterprise funds are what we've historically used to operate and to construct, maintain those facilities. But that would be additional analysis we would look at based off of demand then. We're looking at potentially, say 20 years, 10 to 20 years, say, for this to entirely fill up. So when the first structure goes in, it doesn't mean that we'll have the demand sufficient on day one. But certainly we have to, as we start gaining momentum, constantly update and refine our estimates to when do we have the sufficient demand that warrants public investment in parking beyond what is privately invested. I don't know the answer as far as number of years, but we are aware of that.
Just based on the one slide, that's the railroad redevelopment area and outside redevelopment area, and the estimate is 1,000 to 1,400 parking spaces, which is a lot, and now that's when it's all said and done.
When it's finished, yes.
And so I'm curious as far as which, kind of piggybacking off of that as far as, and I would guess it would be completely up to what the market demand is. However, if you were to develop an RFP and want to focus on a certain area, is there an area of this? I mean, you're probably not just going to open it up as a big free-for-all. Is there a section that you want to start from the top bottom or bottom up?
No, we don't feel like we're limited geographically as far as where we can start or have to start, either based off of utilities or any other land uses. Really, this is a blank canvas where if somebody says, hey, I want to start in the middle at the market, for example, and I have a great idea, we can start there. We don't want to limit it and say only building number one, that mixed use along the street. We don't want to put ourselves in that corner necessarily. So we do have a wide open.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Are you, is that enough?
No, I might keep going. I'm fine. Thank you.
Councilor Nice.
Actually, piggybacking off of what Councilor Erickson was talking about. So it does say 1,000 to 1,400 spaces are projected. Do we have any idea how many that you would expect to be, surface lots versus some sort of a structure?
At this time, no. We would do further if, when we're talking that 1,000 to 1,400, that includes all of that beyond the rail yard. So everywhere there's these new structures to include these that are not on the rail property, these two. And so,
okay.
Yeah, this 1,000 to 1,400 is much more beyond just the rail yard redevelopment.
That includes the outside redevelopment
Yes, yep,
area.
that can,
okay.
it includes the adjacent development.
Okay, and just as a commentary, let's say, wet finger $25,000 a space, that's 25 to 35 million, and if it was all structures in just ramps and parking structures, that's a lot of private dollars. So, the one thing I would just point out that I've been thinking about as far as, and this is just comment, as far as the railroad track is, I'm hoping, and it kind of looks like it's depicted in the plan, that you could do some things like have a street straddle the railroad track, and then maybe you do some berming and then some landscaping, and you move the development over a little bit, and then if you have low speed trains, I'm not sure that as I've thought about it, that the track and the trains is going to be near as big of an issue as it's kind of being made out to be, because there's a lot of creative things that you could do to buffer.
Yeah, and some of that buffering just is, you see some of the trees and landscaping, but you have that kind of loop road that separates the development from the rail site. So that's helpful. Certainly we've talked about some public art space and walls to separate the train yard, the tracks from the development. So all those things help. And I feel like there's other people that want to weigh in.
You hit a note here.
Apparently,
I think, Counselor.
everybody's
Carrie, did you have a comment on that?
forming.
Yep. We had a lot of those comments during the public process, and that was one reason why we had the loop road on that east side, was to provide that buffer. And also, we looked at other developments in towns like Denver that have light rail running right through kind of urban developments, and they've done things in their buildings to help mitigate some of those sounds and vibrations that you get with the trains going through, and they actually get more trains than 8 to 10 that go through next to some of these developments. And also, I think the city maybe in the future is possibly looking at a quiet zone through that area too, so I think that will help offset some of those concerns.
You have one more?
Yes, and finally, what generally can you do with this money when we sell a parcel? I know it's restricted to transportation, and would we have some sort of a fund, as it were?
Yes, because we primarily funded the purchase using money we received from Federal Highway, one of the requirements for using that money is any revenue we generate from the sale of the property, and this is not just our project, this is just projects in general using federal funds, is that any of that revenue has to be reinvested into a national highway system eligible project. For the city, what that means is generally it's our arterial streets are eligible for that process. So that's where we would need to reinvest our any proceeds we get from the property. We would look for a project that fits that criteria. There's more than just being an arterial street. We also have to, similar to what we do at the rail yard, you've got to purchase property using federal standards. You've got to do an environmental review, follow state and federal design requirements. So doing all that, it does take a little bit to pick a project that fits all that criteria that works best for us. Now, there's an opportunity, we have some of those projects in our 5-year capital plan. We can potentially replace existing sales tax funds in those projects and then have that sales tax eligible for other projects in town, so that there's an opportunity there. That would be part of the CIP process too. Once we know when we're getting that funds received, we'd have to work to, are we replacing funds and reallocating those sales tax, or is it increasing the funding in streets and engineering?
Could a major project like 60th Street North potentially be on the list like that?
That is a candidate that would probably likely fit.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you. Maybe Director Ketchum's probably the best, at least to start with this question. The thing I want to make sure that we point out today is that this is a concept of vision and goals, and there's no place that we're negotiating or trying to take over adjacent property, but provide a vision. I think there's been some misconceptions that as part of the dreaming in the process of what fits in an area like this. So I want to make sure that we say it really slow and really clearly, that we're not looking to take over anyone's property that's an existing place, but there may be a vision for it as well for them to redevelop their property.
Councilor, absolutely. That's a great point. You see things up here on the map, certainly that are outside of the rail boundaries. Those are simply ideas. When you get creative folks in the room and then you try to tell them everything has to fit within this box, this is what you get back, is a bunch of stuff outside of the box. So what I look at this is kind of free advice to those people that own that property surrounding the rail redevelopment. Hey, here's some potential complementary uses based off of the current landscape downtown that will fit that. The city's not here to put a road through your property and take your land from you. The city's not going to tear your building down to put one up that we like better. Private property owners are still in charge of their private property.
Thank you. May I have one more?
Yes.
More of a comment again as well. I really appreciate the design work that was done to limit the amount of surface parking, at least in the concept stage, because I don't think that it was ever our intent over taking over this or acquiring this piece of property to be in the surface parking business, as it were, that the parking needs to be self-contained and as part of the development. So to maximize the use of space, I really appreciate what your department's done, planning's done, as well as RDG. So thank you, Councilor.
Okay, I have a number of questions, comments that I'd like to make. Haven't heard none. First of all, I want to encourage you strongly, Director, to include a citizen, another citizen, and obviously a counselor on your board. I think that's very important to get buy-in from the citizens and from us, so that we can be updated, et cetera. And I know you'll do that along the way. Carrie, some of the projects, can you tell us some of the projects that you've done that in case, I'm traveling around, I want to go take a look at it, we could?
Specific projects, we do a lot of public work, so we do a lot of streetscapes and things like that. Mixed use developments, we haven't done as many of those. We've just done planning work for them, and then usually a developer will take that on and then develop that out. A project up in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota is an example where our planning group went in, developed a kind of a vision, and then the developer community kind of took it over and created development. So that's one example of that.
Okay. Any others?
Trying to think some others. Again, it's been mainly public space. Go ahead. Oh yes, Springfield Railroad project. We did a streetscape project through there. Then we also developed a concept for their rail development, and we're also working on a potential project in Midtown Omaha that has a similar mixed-use kind of concept as well.
Okay, that's Springfield, Missouri, not South Dakota.
Springfield, Illinois, actually.
Okay. Springfield what?
Springfield, Illinois.
Illinois.
Yep, the capital.
Got it. Okay, I have to flip through my pages as we go because that's the way I take notes. The picture, I don't know which slide it is, they're not numbered, but it's right after the concept redevelopment program where you've got a mixed-use retail, office, residential example, Cedar Rapids. Can you get to that one, Darren? Oh, what's up there? That's a new build?
Yeah. This is a new building. Our office did not do this building, but it's just an example.
Example of what?
Yeah, it's in their downtown, just south of their downtown.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that that's what it was. It wasn't a renovation, and,
Yep.
But, boy, that would fit in right downtown Sioux
yeah.
Falls, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other project we reference, the Council Bluffs project, we actually did the planning project
Yep.
for this area. Then we also did the streetscape, and then once the public kind of investment was made to that streetscape, new development came in like this, and it's really flourished down there.
This summer, as a place, I saw a lot of apartment deals like that, concept the same in North Indianapolis. They have a big complex up there. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with that?
Yep, yep.
And the same kind of thing there. Very, very nice,
Yeah.
yes. I have a couple of others, excuse me. What would happen if somebody wanted to come in and put up a 20-story mixed-use hotel, convention center, that kind of thing?
Certainly, that would be a proposal that we would evaluate and consider against the criteria we establish for the use of the property. And if the details of the project were sufficient to warrant, awarding that project, I would say that's, something that could happen. I think we like to think about, hey, are we there yet? Are we going to start seeing some of that level of development? I think maybe the conservative side of me thinks that maybe we're closer to that 5 to 10 story type of development, and it fits in there. But I would certainly say we're not ruling out any development at this point. If somebody came in with a great idea that was 20 stories tall, I think it's in our responsibility to the city to vet that project. And
Okay, thank you. The way I understand this, are we going to be looking at one developer for all this land on the RFP? This will be, they can pick a piece, and so if they, like I said, if somebody came in, wanted a 20-story building where, number 4 is whatever that is, they could come in and make a proposal on that, or picking 2 sites and combining them, et cetera.
yeah, certainly, we'll tie some timeframes to these as we award projects, so that way you can't say, hey, I'm going to do X here, and then 10 years later we're still talking about X. But if somebody had a project that required them to, I need parcels 2 and 3 to make this happen, I think that's certainly within the realm of possibility. I think it's less realistic that one developer comes in and gets all 10 acres and can meet the timelines that we would establish to develop that.
Okay. Could we have more than one RFP selected?
Yes, absolutely.
So we could have
We could have
multiple
concurrent
development-
projects going on throughout the development area. Yeah, it doesn't have to be one in sequence. It can be parallel paths.
So like, I think, who was it said, this is a concept. It's not the final version, no, it won't be.
Certainly,
Now,
if we select a project, could have weighting on how other developers would submit their projects following on. If you get one of these types of structures, it may not make a lot of sense to submit a proposal right beside it of the same thing. So we expect that to kind of ebb and flow.
Could you put this, the one up, the last one that you usually, the 3-dimensional? And, no, you're going in the wrong direction. There you go. How are we going to get 10th Street through there?
You're talking the bridge there? Yeah, it's just not showing because of the technology on the photo. The viaduct runs beside this. There's separation between the bridge and the building.
Oh, this would be underneath the bridge?
It'd be to the north of it.
and north, but it looks like 10th Street there runs right through the southern half of that thing, but it'd be, we're
It'd be
just,
going over top.
okay,
Yeah, the
got
building
it.
would just be to the north, there's separation, just this angle.
Now I see what you mean. Now it was, my head was saying, now wait a minute, how are we gonna get that? And now it makes some sense. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Director Cooper.
Just to conclude, the information that we're presenting today, along with a attached report that will provide more detail to this, is going to be available on the city website, Aaron said, by the end of the week? By the end of the week.
Super. So anyone out there who wants to take a look at this, even now has ideas or something, can get hold of you or
Right.
yeah.
So
Director
thank you for
Ketchum,
your-
and we can go from there.
Right.
Ideas are still welcome, in other words.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other business of the group? Meeting is adjourned. Start in 15 minutes at